Once again, the media is getting the narrative on a Big Ten team. This time, Ohio State. So very wrong. We're going to talk about how Ohio State's narrative that they are a team that has not played a very tough schedule is actually a complete myth. And even though you will show these numbers to an SEC fan, they'll still try to say, the SEC is trash. But let's go ahead and look at the numbers, deliver the news, and then investigate between Ohio State's schedule and some of the other big dog schedules out there, and also at the same time give the Big Ten some credit about their scheduling as well. So first, we want to look at a tweet from Kevin Warner. Kevin Warner is, where's it at? There we go. Kevin Warner is the the associate athletic director at James Madison University, and he did some research for himself, looking at wins over bowl eligible teams who are in the top 30 in Warren Nolan, and then he also includes Duke as well because of Duke is in the ACC championship game against Virginia. Who is that sitting at the very top? That's right, Ohio State with 7. Nobody else in the country has more than 6 wins over bowl eligible teams. Ohio State has 7. Now, this does not include, some of you might be saying, well, the Grambling State is 7-5. This does not include FCS teams, as we will go ahead and look at the data here to show you what we're talking about. But first, let's review the list because this is obviously the reason why Kevin is making the list. He has James Madison in all caps there with 6 wins over bowl eligible teams. He also has Oregon, Indiana, BYU, and USC. Teams, USC obviously not getting a ton of credit with their 3 losses. I think they should be getting more credit. I think they should be ranked above teams like Utah and Virginia. I understand not having them above Texas because Texas does have the win over Texas A&M. However, you look at a Texas A&M team and they have 5 wins over bowl eligible teams, but they played such a terrible SEC schedule. Anyway, we don't need to get into that here. Anyway, but essentially, the only conference that has teams who have won 6 and 7 games over bowl eligible teams is the Big Ten, which is incredibly striking because the Big Ten does play 9 conference games. In addition to that, you also have the 4 best teams in the Big Ten, in my opinion, in Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, and USC. Now, we're going to look at those schedules look at the Ohio State schedule here in just a minute, but let's also review 5 in the SEC. This is where it does take a toll on you, only playing 8 conference games, playing a cupcake FCS opponent, and then also when your rivals are not nearly as good as they have been in the past. Of course, Georgia does benefit from it, with Georgia Tech being better, but even then, Georgia only has 4 wins over bowl eligible teams. With five, you have Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Alabama, Notre Dame. Again, that schedule not looking great. Texas Tech, Michigan, they're a Big Ten team up there. North Texas, Tulane, and Virginia. We've talked all season about how this Michigan schedule was not super difficult and how they really should have made the playoffs this season despite having a younger team, but they in fact did not make it because they lost to really some of the only I wouldn't say only, some of the more difficult competition on their schedule, that being Ohio State, Oklahoma, and USC. But overall, you just look at this and the spots that are the highest with bowl eligible opponents is filled in the Big Ten. So let's go ahead and look at the Ohio State schedule, and then we will kind of compare it to some of the other SEC schedules that it gets looked at. So you can go here to the Yahoo Sports schedule. I like going to this one because it actually gives you the final record of the teams that the teams face. So Ohio State against Texas, obviously bowl eligible team. They're ranked to the top 15. Grambling is 7-5, but that's an FCS team, so they're not bowl eligible, so they're not going to count them. Ohio is 4-8, most likely going to be playing Penn State in the game above bowl there, and we can see how Ohio does against a Penn State Big Ten team. Washington going at Washington 8-4. Ohio State takes care of business there. Minnesota destroying Minnesota, who's 7-5. Illinois. The only teams on the schedule that are not bowl eligible are Wisconsin, Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. Now, obviously that is adding to some of the schedule narrative here because Ohio State hasn't exactly played a good team since, October pretty much. And then, of course, everybody wants to downgrade Illinois just because they lost to Wisconsin. However, you look at the schedule, Penn State didn't come through. That makes it difficult. However, they are bowl eligible, which gives Ohio State one more bowl eligible win there. And then obviously at the end you have Michigan, who is 9-3. They were 9-2 at the time when they were playing Ohio State. This is a schedule filled with teams that are going to bowl games, and you might look at the schedule and say, "Oh, Minnesota, they're 7-5. They're not all that good." Do you really think Arkansas is better than Minnesota? Do you really think that a team like Florida is better than Minnesota? You can think that, but we don't have any concrete evidence of that happening. Florida lost to a G5 team, albeit a better G5 team, but still a G5 team at home. So you look at some of these situations here, and yes, you can do power rankings and strength of schedule, all that stuff, whatever you want to do. But these are teams that are going to be going to a bowl game. These are teams that are going to be playing in the postseason, unlike other teams in the SEC that people are trying to prop up, like South Carolina, Mississippi State. The names go on and on and on. And that's really what you get when you look at a team like Alabama, right? If we go to all right, if we go to Georgia, you see Georgia 5-7 Marshall, Austin Peay 7-5. Again, that's like Grambling State for Ohio State. They're an FCS team. Okay, you got a win over a bowl team in Tennessee. You did not beat Alabama, so even though that is a bowl team on your schedule, obviously Alabama going to the playoffs are not just a bowl team. You still have 5-7 Kentucky, 5-7 Auburn. Ole Miss is up there, but 4-8 Florida, 5-7 Mississippi State, 1-11 Charlotte. You have teams on here that are not bowl eligible that, yes, you're beating them, but then you also have teams on here that aren't bowl eligible that you're playing far too close against. Florida being one of those you're playing far too close against. Austin Peay, you should not only score 28 points against them. I know that's very early on in the season, but still, putting all of this together, yes, Ohio State did not play Alabama, but Ohio State still played a team in Texas who was able to defeat Texas A&M. So you have to give credit where credit is due for a team like Ohio State that still had difficult teams on their schedule and actually took care of business against them. And at home, too. Georgia had that game against Alabama at home. And then you look here at Alabama, they lost to a team that wasn't even bowl eligible. And Florida State came back, whooped Louisiana Monroe, whooped Wisconsin, whoop-de-doo, good for you. They take care of business against Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee. Those are all bowl eligible teams, but they're all teams that haven't really beat anybody. Well, I shouldn't say they not all have. Obviously, Georgia's beat some teams that Vanderbilt has, but Missouri and Tennessee. Missouri only has one win over a bowl eligible team this season. Then you have South Carolina, Eastern Illinois, Auburn, teams in there. Yes, LSU is 7-5. You're going to get that gimme there for 5 wins over bowl teams, but let's be honest, LSU is not a good football team. Brian Kelly was fired for a reason. Brian Kelly is assembled a bad team for a reason because he was not very good at it, and LSU is just kind of coming off getting some wins over some lower level teams that are just talent wise worse than them. So you have Alabama in there as another one. You could continue looking at a team like Vanderbilt. So let's go to Vanderbilt's schedule here. They're 10-2, and they probably played some more bowl eligible teams because I think both their losses were to bowl eligible teams. But Vanderbilt, again, FCS team, Virginia Tech, that like catapulted some of these SEC teams up there. Virginia Tech fired their coach very early on, and for good reason too. He was not very good. South Carolina 4-8. You gave a Georgia State team 21 points on you, albeit you scored 70, but still 21 points against you. Utah State actually helps them, and they're 6-6, so they are bowl eligible. But then you lose to Alabama. Yes, you beat LSU, but again, only by 1 score over LSU, 1 score over Missouri. You lose to Texas, and then 5-7 Auburn, 5-7 Kentucky in there as well. So basically, what I'm showing you here is that although Ohio State might not have a game against Indiana or Oregon or Alabama on their out-of-conference or on their regular season schedule, it still is impressive that Ohio State was able to go 12-0, that they were able to defeat as many bowl-eligible teams as they did. And yes, you do kind of have to get lucky with some of the Group of 5 stuff a little bit too, but there are also Group of 5 teams that can get you, as we saw evidence against Florida. Now, Florida's not a playoff team by any means or anything like that, but still, better group of five teams can come in. They can get you. They can give you a hard time. And if you do not, completely wake up against them, they're going to give you a good game. Ohio was semi close in that game against Ohio State at halftime, but no, they never really at any point did anybody think that Ohio had a good point of winning that game. So basically, that's all I wanted to show you. Ohio State has the most wins in the country over bowl eligible teams. It really does matter. It really does mean something. And although we want to look at rankings and strength of schedule, strength of record, yada yada, all this stuff, at the end of the day, you look at who has won and you look at who has lost their games, and Ohio State has the best amount of wins over teams that have won their games and are making it to a bowl game. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you being here. Like, subscribe to the Big Ten Huddle. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.